Hi everyone, I'm Vicki Murphy. I am a Jira Align specialist with Expium, which is a Platinum Solutions partner with Atlassian. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the updates to Jira Align for both users and administrators with the release of version 10.107, which was released to production instances on May 6th, 2022. Let's go ahead and dig in. As with the previous releases of Jira Align in 2022, we saw even more updates to the API 2.0. We can really see that this is a focal point for the Jira Align development team. With this version, we have some updates to defects and tasks. So we are now able to collect metadata for those work items using the get function, as well as update custom fields for defects and tasks with the post, put, and patch functions. There's also been some added dynamic validation. So Atlassian has implemented dynamic required fields validation for all of the default fields tied to the details panel's settings page. So that is an administrative page where administrators can determine if certain default fields should be required or not. And now the API validation is going to mirror the validation in the UI. Additionally, you can determine if a field is required or not via the API, and there's details about what function to perform to do that in the release notes, which are linked in the description of this video. Also, if you are using Azure DevOps as your team tool connected to Jira Align, there's some updates in this release for you. You're now able to, or an administrator of your system is able to choose the system role for users created via the connector. So do check those out in the release notes as well. There's also some really great updates at the user end of Jira Align with this release. So let's go ahead and jump into the tool. The first update I want to talk about is to the feature work items. So on the spin tab for features, we now have some updates. This progression of spin section is now available for features that have a parent work item. So previously, the functionality was that if you had a standalone feature, meaning a feature that did not have a parent epic or capability in the system, you were able to visualize this spin tab and the data on it. Now, if you have a feature that is parented, you can get a snapshot of the financials around that feature on the spin tab with this progression of spin section that has some details around estimated spend by features and accepted spend by stories. As with the spin tab and the financial data on other work items, we are able to click into these boxes to view more details, including some calculation breakdowns here, which are really great to see how Jira Align is determining that value. If this spin tab looks totally new to you on features, then it's likely not enabled in the administrative section. If you think this is a valuable piece of information for users at the program layer, it's a great time to pull in stakeholders and your administrator for Jira Align and have a conversation and see if turning this on really will provide that business value. The next update was to the dependency work items, and I'm going to switch over to the dependencies grid here under that program layer. And this update allows us to actually export our dependencies now. So previously we weren't able to do this, but now under more actions, we can either export all of the dependencies or dependencies that have an action required. So this is really great to share this information. If you have a user or an individual who's not a user in Jira Align, you can share this information with them much more easily now, as well as take this information and dump it into a BI tool if you have one and you want to make a custom report around dependencies. This release also made some updates to process flows. And before I dig into this, I want to mention process flows are still called value streams in some instances, as you can see here. So just be aware they're the same thing. They operate the same way, just different terminology that's still being updated. Previously, whenever we created a process flow or a value stream, we were able to choose between two types under this type field, either an operational value stream or a developmental value stream. And generally speaking, the intent behind this was to separate out developmental process flows, which were intended to show the steps used to develop a new product or solution, from operational process flows that were used to indicate duplicate the steps needed to actually provide a good or service to a customer. In the release notes, Atlassian did say that those operational value streams were just very underused, and that is why they are going to be deprecating that option. They are going to keep the developmental value streams and they will operate the same. Atlassian did say this is going to, this deprecation will take place over the next few updates, but in this version, they did remove that operational process step field from the work items details panels of themes, features, epics, capabilities, and stories. And they also made some updates to the API. So they removed that operational step ID field from the API and renamed the developmental step ID to just process step ID. So if you interact with those process steps in the API, be aware of those updates. The second update to process flows is the consolidation of the process step field on work items. Here you can see an example of a feature that is following multiple process flows. And when this happens, what will take place on your details panel is you will see this consolidation under show more process flows here. When you expand this, it will have the different process flow options or they will be sorted in alphabetical order according to program. This is just better management of the screen real estate here and will be a great update if you have work items following multiple process flows. There's also been some updates to the work tree. If you aren't familiar with the work tree, it's a really great report that allows you to visualize the full hierarchy of work in a few different views. So we do have the view from the epic down to the stories, or from a story up to the higher levels of work. You can also use the team view to get that team-centric information, as well as a strategy view to get that top layer of information. In the top-down view from the Epic and the team view, you will find an in-page filter allowing you to narrow the information down to a program or a program increment. Previously, when this was toggled on in either of those views, the logic was messing up what data was showing in the strategy view. So it was showing incorrect data. And with this release, Atlassian did fix that logic. And now whether or not that item is, or that filter is toggled on or off in those other views, you will see the proper information in your work tree view here, in the strategy view. As with other releases, we also had lots and lots of defect fixes. You can see the list here. There's dozens of them. Some of the highlights are some fixes to how @mentions work in the discussions, some updates to the creation details panel of themes, as well as even more API 2.0 updates. So if you want to see the full list or dig into any of these, the release notes are again linked in the description of this video. All right, that is all that release of version 10.107 had in store for us. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck on your Jira Align journey.